Hello and welcome to a Star Citizen road to release, or at least a road to beta. I wanted to go over some of the major and essential features that don't appear on the roadmap, mechanics that are going to be in the game or that the game needs to have before it's considered more complete. It's not going to be an exhaustive list because more features and modules and parts of features and evolutions of the current features and tech will be a constant part of Star Citizen's development, but it will be what they've talked about already and what we know is coming and what they've said is coming. To what extent the tech will work and how gameplay will actually be for each of these mechanics in the future when it's fully fleshed out is yet unknown, but I will summarize everything as best as I can. Player count and progression. Hugely important is getting the game into a state of being an MMO. So that means a few things need to come together. Server-side object container streaming and full persistence is something that we're getting in the not too distant future. This is the ability for servers to save info seamlessly and stand by gameplay area on the fly, as well as load and turn that area off. This leads to significant server efficiency gains, but also as a prerequisite of permanent progression, or at least in the shorter term, the sort of stopping of constant resets every 3 months. As well as the next stage, which is then server meshing, the ability for servers to dynamically and seamlessly hand off data to each other and allocate servers to object containers based on population of that particular object container. That could be a planet, a ship, or a room. They could all individually be run by a single server. This set of features is core for the game to have a large amount of players in an area, travel between those areas, and for progress to matter. They are all sort of currently being worked on, all those features, at least the prerequisites of server meshing and that sort of stuff is being worked on, and then they will start to move on to server meshing. We don't know to what extent the universe will be sort of cut up though. Will there be regional servers? We don't really know yet. It will be, they will try and get as many players as possible into a single shard. The dream and the goal is to get everyone onto a single shard, like in EVE Online. Ship gameplay. Now, as Star Citizen is primarily a game about spaceships, although not entirely now, it is very first-person shooter and touches a lot of different areas. Spaceships, though, are a massive core of this. Physicalized components is desperately needed in the game. This is literally having each of the systems of a ship with its own item that then has stats and exists physically in the ship. That can be damaged and removed separately, and they're planning this physical damage system so that ships no longer have health pools. Projectiles will damage and pierce the ship, damage the hull. Armor is a different beast. It's a literal component that they will have to penetrate. If components are then hit by damage or by a projectile going through, it pierces through them or whatever, they will then be damaged and lose functionality. If they get destroyed, then you'll lose the function of that power generator that was just destroyed, or you'll be able to individually target thrusters and disable a ship like that, which means that someone could board you or you'll be at their mercy. Potentially you could shear a ship in two. There are going to be repair mechanics. Some of this will be by hand, so you can use a multi-tool to repair your ship, but also there'll be ways of doing it by drone, ship to ship, ship in ship, in a bay, all that sort of type of repair. Subcomponents are another feature that allow for the customization of ship items with components that change the stats of each of those items, so you'll literally be able to go inside a power generator and add some, based on its sort of like quality, add some extra components in there. This might be part of the repair by hand system, getting a component working for short periods of time, or changing a fuse as well. Modularity of ships and customization of them is something that is core to the game. Not only will you be able to change weapons and systems, but also whole rooms and major functionality of certain systems. Changing a torpedo bay into a transport for troops, or for example a cargo bay into a lab. These will all be features of certain ships. Aftermarket customization of ships with paints, flare items and more is also planned. Ships still have some core functionality and new systems that are coming on board at some point as well. Life support systems that produce oxygen, and then the room system spreads it across the ship. If you open a door to space, or you get damage in your ship that like breaks a bulkhead, you could have an explosive decompression, or you can lose all the oxygen in the room, that sort of stuff, but you will be able to seal off rooms and things like that as well. But we're also having computers and computer blades and lots of other little systems that support other gameplay in the future. Supporting capital ships as well needs some optimization and tech, including ship-to-ship and ship-to-station docking. How will the game deal with these ships when players are offline? Do they despawn? Do they need to be logged off in a safe area? Are they always persistent? Some of this still needs to be worked out, and I suppose that's the same for pretty much all the mechanics we're going to be talking about. There's going to be a lot of iteration here, and lots of the stuff still needs to be worked out. Tractor beams will allow for the moving of small objects and cargo, but can also be used to help get ships from planet side to orbit, or to tow them to a spaceport if they're damaged. Other gameplay loops can make use of them too for utility, so mining and salvage ships, you can move objects towards those ships to help them nom them up or move cargo around. Drone gameplay is going to be a thing, so these are semi-automated and remote drones that have various uses based on their loadout, from scouting to refueling to repair, all that sort of jazz. Lots of ships need to get completed as well. CIG need to get the pipeline and major ships done for not just the humans and Vandal, but also the Banu, the Xi'an, the Tavaran, and the mostly unknown Kerfak. Also, I mean, going a little bit beyond that, they are going to be first-person races as well, not just ships for them. So we are going to have animals. We are going to have bipedal races of those names. Something, well, the Kerfak might be tentacle beasts for all we know. Something that they've yet to make it in the PU is any form of alien. We have seen the Vandal in Squadron 42 teasers, but they want to have other races that I mentioned earlier. You could certainly have a game more akin to a beta without potentially having all those races in. Wildlife will be a thing though, dangerous animals, but we don't know to what extent and what mechanics will be associated with animals other than them being dangerous on certain planets and obviously more benign on others, whether there be big game hunting, science, or capture of these creatures. After a lot more of this is in, CIG can then more in earnest balance the flight model and combat, something that is much needed for the game. The game can't be considered a beta or sort of like progress onto a live stage until they have a more solid model for flight and combat. Star Citizen's AI needs a huge amount of work as well, from getting it generally functional and challenging at different levels, but also having the AI using ground vehicles and defenses. NPCs are supposed to have 24-hour schedules, they eat, work and sleep. We are going to be able to hire NPC crews, both individual crew and whole crews for capital ships. These need tech to have them physicalized and simulated dynamically, so when you aren't near an NPC, but you've hired them or whatever, their function on board a ship is simulated to save them resources. They don't physicalize that NPC until you get close to them. They are going to have AI modules as well for turrets to perform simple defense operations or other simple tasks, not as good as an NPC crewman, but some ships will have this functionality for AI modules. They're also supposed to be slaving turrets as well, so some ships can have their turrets slaved forward so that the pilot can use them even if they don't have a gunner in them. Organization and group gameplay is foundational to Star Citizen, a major pillar. There is going to be a mission and asset sharing in the future, a permission system allowing for certain named players and NPCs to access certain doors, areas of ships, its systems, the abilities to have groups and orgs manage and effectively share rewards and ships and missions. Expect a system to allow for alliances and wars as well. Part of the party system will allow you to more effectively matchmake or look for groups and then rate players based on performance as well. It's about game accessibility with groups, something that Star Citizen has a little bit of now, but nowhere near enough to be a proper MMO. There are going to be NPC orgs known as guilds as well that will allow for some benefits, like bounty hunters guilds allowing you to potentially have more information on criminals in an area and giving you more access to more missions, that sort of stuff. Moving on now to more specific gameplay loops and mechanics, there are a lot of gameplay mechanics that I'm going to briefly mention that will have mini games associated with them when they've iterated on them, but I'm just going to touch on them in brief. We know there's going to be science gameplay, and ships like the Endeavour can have science labs that can crunch data and potentially even manufacture chemicals, compounds and commodities. There is also item tweaking and permanent overclocking of weapons and systems that can be done. Exploration crosses over into science as well, but in terms of exploration features, the game needs the ability to find things, so via scanning and information sharing, but things like points of interest, anomalies, salvage sites, minables, base locations, pirate bases, treasure, loot, new things to find. You'll be able to save and share location data and information and sell that. The range of points of interest could actually be quite massive, with the potential for unmapped jump points, new planets, new animals, plants, just sort of like outposts, ancient alien tech, whatever they want, treasure hunting. They've got caves and that sort of stuff as well they want to put in game. Salvage gameplay will have players finding items and wrecks to effectively mine and make their scrap into little cubes of cargo, but the mechanic will also allow for the removal of individual weapons and components by hand, blowing apart ships with salvage charges or stripping their hulls. Farming is going to be a mechanic as well. They've talked about this both on the surface of a planet, on moons as well, but as well as having this on ships, specifically the biodomes of the Endeavour. We have even seen CIG testing out harvestable entities, even now. I expect the mechanic to be getting dirt, chemicals, plant food, seeds, and finding areas and the correct conditions to grow certain plants, which you can then sell or, complete missions with or whatever. Further to the criminal system and security, they are removing armistice zones, which means that security of areas will be entirely enforced by turrets, ships, ground forces, laws, customs, and associated mechanics of those areas, but not a hard, you can't fire weapons in these zones. You can sort of smuggle weapons in, technically, or you can shoot someone in the face, but then you have to deal with the repercussions. These need to prevent trolling and exploiting, as well as create barriers to outlaw and pirate behavior in certain areas. Barriers, but maybe not insurmountable barriers in some situations. So sort of bear that in mind. The game is PvP and PvE and has experiences of both. Yes, there are going to be much more safe UEE patrolled areas where crime is much less likely to happen, and PvP, if you try to do it, you would regret it, like for a long period of time. Others, sort of like other systems, are going to be more Wild West, and some, like the Stanton system, in between. The way that outlaws are handled also needs a lot of work. Ship and vehicle repair by hand, by drone, and by ship is going to be a thing. Refueling in space again by ship and drone. There's going to be mechanics to mine fuel. Potentially some of this will be done by hand. Quantum fuel, it being a solid form of fuel maybe, and different to the other fuels we'll be using in game. Still waiting on more info on that. E-warfare as a mechanic is going to be a thing, but we don't know to what extent or how it's going to be implemented. It could potentially be tied to deeper hacking mechanics, data interception, and I suppose scanning down targets and tracking them, but also signal spoofing, preventing ships from targeting you, that sort of stuff. Generally, a more developed multi-crew and co-op experience is needed. Larger ships need to be balanced so that the crew play an important role at every station. This is going to require a lot of iteration on turrets, stations, MFDs, repair and ship damage gameplay, but it's obviously an incredibly important part of the game. If you are on a capital ship, you don't want to be bored all the time just because you're an engineer. A robust contract system is essential as well, allowing for players to create missions for players and NPCs or request services, from moving cargo to setting bounties to requesting specific areas to be found for them that have particular mineral resources on, but also sort of tying into the economy, the ways to buy and sell goods. We need to be able to sell goods to players and NPCs in a variety of ways, and a contract system for that, or auction houses and things like that as well are going to be very, very vitally important. Healing and death of a spaceman. Mortality in Star Citizen will be a thing. You have a certain amount of lives, and you can soft die a few times. Eventually, though, you will permanently die and have to make a new character, but your possessions will have passed on to that new character, though there's going to be potentially some ways of expanding and extending your life as well, probably money-based in hospitals or whatever. In regard to getting injured, there are going to be a variety of level of injury. Tier 1 to 3 is sort of like what we've been told about. Tier 3 being very light wounds, Tier 2 being crippled limbs, and Tier 1 being life-threatening injuries. There will be some form of ability to stabilize characters that have been injured until you can get them somewhere that they can be treated more readily. There will be field sort of like medics, and you will be able to drag people, and you'll be able to stab them with certain syringes, and there might be some gameplay associated with trying to work out what area of their body's been injured and stabilizing them based on that. Some ships and planets and cities will have medical facilities of differing qualities as well. Insurance mechanics will allow you to insure your ship and its equipment to different levels. There also needs to be some way of preventing exploitation, but it's not just going to be a one level of insurance for ships. There's going to be lots of different ranges, I believe. Player-run businesses are going to be a thing, from shops on a Banu merchantman, but also more specific mechanics for, I know, people transport on the Genesis Skyliner. So you'd have to set ticket prices and then set a route and manage the happiness of your passengers, and that would make you more money because you get more passengers in the future, or you could charge more money for tickets or whatever. But that's obviously going to be very useful for players in game that need to travel from one area to another as well, not just NPCs. An expanded cargo system is essential for the game as well, so this is going to be, at the very least, commodity timers for moving cargo on and off ships, but cargo of various sizes. They need to have larger cargo crates because lots and lots of small ones are incredibly resource intensive to the game. So we need a range and different types based on whether it's a liquid or a gas or whatever, or just solid cargo. Most cargo needs to be able to be moved by hand as well, and looted, and then cargo being managed. Also, we want to be able to have boxes that can store usable items that are not just commodities, so we can put like weapons and stuff in one, and then the cargo grid knows that those are weapons that we want to sell. They are refining the render-to-texture tech that they've got as well. That currently allows for things like comms calls, but also is potentially going to be used for the news mechanic that they've got in game. So the Reliant Mako, for example, is a news van, and it's suspected that render-to-texture tech will be used to effectively live stream from in-game to another screen in-game, potentially. We're not entirely sure of that news mechanic, but we'll have to wait and see. But there is going to be one, or at least missions associated with the news van. Data running, data as cargo, data interception are all mechanics that we know about and that are going to be a thing. As well as perhaps more in-depth hacking and a breaching system, allowing you to bypass doors, as well as, getting into ships by blowing doors off, not just hacking them necessarily, or blowing up turrets, potentially with demo charges or with weapons fire. Moving more on to talking about gameplay area now. Ground gameplay, there's going to be base building in some form of building outposts and defenses for those outposts, for maybe a base of operations, or to exploit mineral wealth of an area. So you could build mining outposts, or outposts that take moisture in from an area so that you can use them for farming or whatever. The Pioneer is the only ship that we are currently aware of that is built specifically for base building. It's going to be able to build a range of outposts using raw materials and then deposit a fully built outpost onto a planet or moon, and also move them in the future as well. There may be ways to defend your bases with structures, but we know there's going to be a wide range of ground-based vehicles as well. Land claims are associated with this gameplay. Players will be able to survey land, find out what mineral and wealth is sort of like on that area. It could be liquids, it could be oil, it could gold, whatever, lots and lots of different things. You'd survey those areas, you could sell that information, but you could also place in UEE zones anyway, a land claim to say that that area is yours, and that would have the laws and NPC security forces of that area then help to protect that. But in areas that are not UEE controlled, they may have other rules for that, or they may be like the Wild West, and you have to protect your base or keep it undetected to keep it protected. Planetary tech will continue to evolve with additional biomes, rivers, procedural roads, caves, water stuff, and even dynamic weather. This will start to include alien cities as well in the future. Planets and moons orbiting is going to be a thing as well. This requires travel and location data to be a bit more thought out. Jump points are transition points allowing you to move from one star system to another. There may be some additional mechanics there for traversing or mapping them. In regard to how many systems the star system will have, well, they've got 100 to 120 planned, but that will be over a long period of time. At least a handful of star systems will be needed to consider Star Citizen a beta, but to be honest, the more the better in my opinion. There's also going to be general level building stuff with more points of interest being made for space on the ground, but different types of stations, nebula gas giants, environmental hazards, black holes. They're going to be expanding the criminal system with prisons and outlaw areas, more punishments for crimes. Physical inventories are already listed on the roadmap, meaning that players will have to store their items in ship lockers, habs, hangars, storage areas, and that you can't carry everything on your character. This will also include weapons and armor, so like the armor and weapons you actually physically have on you, and you'll be able to loot those items directly off bodies as well. With that in mind, player housing will be a thing, persistent physicalized tabs and hangars that will be rentable or purchasable. To help navigate the world, characters will be able to swim, use mag boots, which are actually EVA thrusters firing downwards to simulate gravity. there will be melee and melee combat. We are expecting better mapping and ways for players to find their ways around the universe as well. They talked about nav beacons, being able to deploy them and maintain them, so you can have waypoints to quantum travel to, but some ways of sharing and saving that location of data is obviously key there. A major part of these gameplay loops and the gameplay area and economy is tying it all together with a dynamic economy and mission simulation, as well as getting missions, I suppose, for all of those individual gameplay loops, because some of those gameplay loops might be incredibly heavy mission orientated, so you're literally looking for missions to do a particular task, like bounty hunting or whatever, but some might be a lot more freeform, like farming, for instance, or overclocking people's weapons or selling things to other players in shops and on the Banning Merchantman. There is going to be a simulation of what's going on in the economy and what NPCs and populations are doing, as well as all the missions that have been done, what NPCs have been killed, what sort of cargo transports are getting through to planets, because they will need to use raw materials to make ships, and then that will affect the prices of everything, but also what those NPC populations are doing. There's going to be probability volumes that are then used for when players are moving through areas to work out what encounters that they might have, whether a bounty hunter finds them or pirates interdict them. The dynamic mission system provides appropriate generated missions for the area based on what's been happening in that area. So you're going to have lots of different sort of modular pieces of missions coming together when you take a mission, so that a mission might be vastly different. Even if it sounds very similar, you might have vastly different outcomes. There might be lots of different parts to it. You might have other missions leading directly on from it, or other things happening, other events happening leading directly on from it. So a simple delivery mission might be vastly complicated one time and very simple another. But the sort of subsumption system, the God AI system, the dynamic mission generation, the economy, all of this is based on everything working together and then relying on each other to generate content for the other. And then it feeds into the information of all of the different parts of it. So it creates appropriate content based on what's happening in those areas. A must for me, though, as well, is having introduction missions for each of the mechanics and jobs in game, so that players can find out how everything works, what's fun, what's possible, what's impossible. I would hope a general tutorial would be a thing as well, sort of like how to move around, how ship combat works, and flying, and we used to have that a while ago, but then they took it out. And really, finally, to stuff that Star Citizen needs to be considered a beta is engine polish and optimization. So a lot of this could actually potentially transfer over once Squadron 42 is complete. Lots of visual improvements and scalability, but the main thing that I'm looking forward to is Vulkan integration. That's probably the most important thing there. It's going to allow for a hardware neutral approach to optimization. Star Citizen should scale to a huge amount of CPU threads and be extremely scalable for future hardware as well. Scalable meaning that it's not going to be just working worse on lower end PCs, and it's going to keep on getting higher and higher sort of like requirements. It's going to be scalable is the plan, at least I believe. No plans for ray tracing support yet, but VR support is still planned for some point in the future, and Star Citizen will most likely make use of any appropriate tech that it can use, but that's also sensible for it to use. And that's what I believe is a reasonably accurate list of Star Citizen's future features and elements needed to bring it to a kind of beta stage. As I said, it's not an exhaustive list because there's going to be lots of iteration and evolution of these mechanics for sure, and I'm sure that CIG as well don't know exactly how everything's going to work and don't even have plans for certain bits beyond, well, we need to have this working so that this can work or whatever. Is there any bits though that you think that I've missed that are essential? What mechanics are you looking forward to in the future? Do you feel the development of Star Citizen is far too slow and you'll look at it when it's in a much better state and all of these features that I've listed here will take, I don't know, another 5-10 years to complete? Whatever your thoughts, I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Every month we have a ship giveaway. For July it's for an 890 Jump, the mighty luxury ship. To be in for a chance of winning that, just be subscribed to my channel and comment on any of my videos this month. More details down below. This has been donated by My Radar. They make a real-world weather app, and this also has some of the astral bodies from Star Citizen in there too, giving some really interesting information. It's getting more updates and functionality, that app as well, and they're adding the planets into the game too. I'm also shilling for NordVPN. If you're looking for a VPN, check them out, as they offer many benefits over free services and allow you to more securely and more freely access the internet, as well as helping you be protected while you're playing online. If you're looking for a gaming PC or upgrade instead, consider Shadow as well, a cloud gaming service that allows you to stream a Windows 10 gaming PC environment from a data center directly to your phone, laptop, PC, or other device. It's great for Star Citizen as long as you have an appropriate internet connection. For both of those services, NordVPN or Shadow, please use the code BoredGamer for discount. If you would like to further support my channel and for more Star Citizen content, consider becoming a Patreon or YouTube member with that join button below my videos. All the links and all that sort of stuff down below. If you've got any feedback, if you'd like to talk about anything that we've talked today, if you've got any questions, whatever, I'd love to hear from you in the comments below as well. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the verse.